Now pay attention, 007. I've always tried to teach you two things. First, never let them see you bleed.
And the second?
Always have an escape plan.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it may be. I'm Christopher Morales, that one Bond guy. It's so excited to be back post graduation. And I couldn't have thought of a more fun topic with a great gentleman here today to talk about Bond music. It's such a pivotal part of the Bond film or just the Bond franchise in general is the music. I mean, it could make or break a film. So, with no further ado, I'd love to introduce you guys to my guest, which has he's been making a splash into the Bond community. He's been to so many events. He's always a great person to have a conversation with. Fletcher, thank you so much for joining me today. Do you mind giving everyone a little snapshot of your involvement with the Bond community, what you do, and
Yeah, thanks so much, Chris. Thanks for having me back. Um, I'm delighted to be here and to discuss this crucial topic that is near and dear to my heart. By now, a few people are aware of who I am. I've sort of taken this next step as being part of the 007 GP British fan club. It's a fan club that's all things Bond. We have more than 400 members across the globe. But most importantly,
and
it's
I'm
all
one of
about
them.
charity. Ah, yes, of course you are.
There you go.
What's your number? What's your number?
00304.
Okay, fantastic. Yeah, I mean, it's all about Bond, passionate Bond fans, but we're also very much about the charities. And, UNICEF being a big focus of the charities we donate to, who we work with. Our president, Phil Dewhurst, he's an amazing guy. He's spearheaded, the formation of the club. The amount of work that this guy puts in to the club is remarkable. I don't know how he does it. But yeah, we're all about, charity for the kids. And as you may know, we have an upcoming event on the HMS Belfast taking place on the 8th of July. It's going to be huge, where we're celebrating and honoring John Glenn, as well as as you know, there are several anniversaries from Russia with Love, Live and Let Die, Octopussy. So it's a huge celebration within the Bond world. And I'm just, a very small cog in a very big wheel. So whether it's me, whether it's you, whether it's Phil, whether it's other board members, whether it's other members of the community, Bond fans on Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, we're all one big, family. We don't always get along, but that's family for you.
Right.
So I'm just a component here. So yeah, that's me.
Well, I absolutely love that. It's still really cool to be all the way in California and represent. I mean, I thought it was really cool. And all the proceeds went to UNICEF. So that was an amazing gesture too. And just, it's so fun. I absolutely love these. And it's just kind of cool to be a part of. As Mr.
That's
White
it.
says, we have people everywhere.
People everywhere. Yeah, exactly.
So,
I mean, Bond is global, and whether you're in London, whether in New York or California or Tibet, doesn't matter. At some point, at least one person has heard of Bond on every continent of this globe.
right.
So we're just happy to be able to include everybody, and that's what it's all about, inclusion.
Exactly. I
So
mean, Bond is universal, I feel like at this point. And speaking of that, see what I did there? So is music, which is the topic of today's discussion. Just a simple banter about Bond music and the Bond sound. My first question to you, Fletcher, is what does it mean to you as a fan when it comes to Bond music that creates that Bond sound? Could it be like the orchestral arrangement of a certain movie, a certain era that you really gravitate towards? What does the Bond sound mean to you?
Um, I, the Bond sound means as much to me as, who's directing the Bond film or who's been cast as 007 himself. Um, I think, what um, John Barry was able to do was, really create a sense of identity,
Mhm.
for the films. You hear a particular theme or an arrangement, and you mostly, know what film that piece of music is coming from.
Right.
Um, I also, for me, it's also about creating the atmosphere as well, and that's one of the things I love about Bond films is that, especially the earlier films, is that when you were transported to these locations that Bond ended up in, it wasn't just the scenery, but there's a sense of atmosphere that you can feel,
Yeah.
and the music always augmented that. The one that I always refer to the most is from Russia with Love.
Oh yeah.
You can like literally smell the streets of Istanbul.
Mhm.
When Bond is there, and the music really kind of emphasizes that it's not overpowering, it's not always lacking, other than the blaring Bond theme in the when he's doing the hotel bug room check. But yeah, it's all about atmosphere, and that's what the Bond or the music in Bond films have always been really, really good at creating a sense of atmosphere. So I think that's what I sort of gravitate towards for the most part in terms of what the music means to me and how I feel about it.
I couldn't agree more. I think the invention, I guess you could say, of integrating the that certain movie's theme within the score is really cool because it gives you, again, like you said, a sense of that movie, that sense of a movie and the theme specific towards that movie. If that makes sense. Like when Thunderball is going to be playing because you have that theme integrated within the score. For Your Eyes Only or Octopussy because you have the themes woven in, and it makes that movie unique. Which, in my opinion, I think we're kind of lacking that and losing that a little bit with like the newer films
I
because I
agree.
think that was more of a it was more of such a classic film thing to do, and now it's so much more complex and there's more arrangements. And while it sounds pretty, I can't wait to go back and hopefully experience that same, John Barry sound. And it would be so cool to get a modern movie with the John Barry sound. I gotta say, I love the horns. I love the big band, the brass, that sound.
Yeah,
I think you can argue,
the Goldfingers.
right, that I think James Bond and what John Barry has done has really created a stereotype or a mold of the spy sound as well. Because ever since Bond has been on the big screen, you see all these other spy films, whether they're parodies or even like Mission Impossible or other films that have come out, and you get that deep brass, that jazz, some of the strings, and there's just like something about that espionage. I'm not too sure what the correct musical term is, but it's like that espionage
An
jazzy
espionage sound.
sound. Yeah, and I
Yeah,
really think we owe it to Bond for that because we really haven't heard anything else but since Bond. Would you agree?
yeah, definitely. I mean, I think, like you said, John Barry really sort of created a blueprint of the sound for spy films and or TV shows. And I think, I suppose, I don't know. I mean, there have been attempts to try and do something different. We've had your Bournes, you have your Jack Bowers.
Right.
Interestingly enough, I think his name is Sean Callery. He
Hmm.
did the music for 24, the TV
Hmm.
show, but he also did the theme music for or the musical score for the Bond game, Everything or Nothing,
Yeah.
one of the best
Right.
Bond games.
Mhm.
So.
There's
Yeah,
a
I
lot of
mean,
overlap with
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, exactly. So there's always going to be like an element of what John Barry introduced
Mhm.
that's being infused or put into, other franchises
Right.
and adjacent, spy protagonists and things like that. But at the end of the day, it really does all come down to Bond, and who's composing, the music for those films. And that's why, I mean, I don't know who's scoring the latest Mission Impossible film, and honestly, no disrespect to that franchise, I don't care. I mean, I'm a huge Mission Impossible fan. The film looks great. I'm going to be, first in line to see it. But I really don't care who's scoring the music because I mean,
Right.
you know, but for Bond, it's okay. Who's doing the score?
Yeah.
We all have a short list or a long list of composers who we want, who we don't want, and that's part of the appeal of Bond.
Yeah.
It's
Hmm.
always about coming back to the Godfather of the spy genre.
Yeah.
So
Right. And I think too that's what makes Bond such an amazing franchise. There's differences between Mission Impossible and Bond. You see the priorities of Mission Impossible are more so, action oriented, the stunts, the everything with big pop up circumstance. Bond, while it has some of those elements too, you can't have a great Bond film without a great score or music. Again, it truly is one of
mhm.
those things that, think back to No Time to Die when we found out who was going to do the song and how many people were waiting. I will raise my hand when I said I was on Spotify down to the last minute to hear what the new song was going to be. People really get invested with the sound and really
Yeah,
invested with everything. And I guess it just you to have your different franchises that have their own different tropes, and Bond music is one of the Bond tropes. That being said, I mean we've heard so many different sounds throughout the 60 plus years. You go from the 60s to the 2000s. And
mhm.
so my next question to you is like, is there a certain time era that you kind of gravitate towards more, something that you always listen to while you're driving a bit more than other decades, if you will?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right because of just how eclectic um, the musical scores are. Sometimes I find myself where I've just got, a whole bunch of music from each era, um, in my playlist.
Mhm.
But I think if I was to choose a specific era that I have probably the most music that I listen to, it's probably the 60s.
Mhm.
Um, don't get me wrong, there are great moments of music in all the other preceding or should I say the subsequent decades, but it's definitely the 60s.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, the Bond back in action from Goldfinger,
Yeah.
when Bond is infiltrating that factory thing that he's about to blow up in the PTS. And of course, the when Bond is driving it through the Alps,
Yeah.
just that sort of sweet. That's one of the other things I love about the Bond music. It's just those sweeping moments where
Mhm.
it's just you're just sort of you're just absorbing things.
And you always will know the scene exactly whenever you hear the song or the score, you'll know exactly what scene it is, what he Bond's
Yeah,
doing, and then what's Bond going to do. So it's
yeah,
plays a huge part.
for sure. And I think this is probably the big one.
Mhm.
Well, there are two actually. Thunderball and On Her Majesty's Secret
Ooh,
Service.
nice.
Um, of course, Tom Jones's iconic theme,
Yeah.
and then of course the beautiful Thunderball instrumental when Bond is arriving on the boat.
Yeah.
I mean, you can play that anyway. You can play that at a jazz club, a
Yeah.
cocktail bar, whatever.
Right.
It's just so perfect. And then for just sheer escapism and just like awe-inspiring music. It's definitely on Her Majesty's Secret Service, Escape from Peace Gloria.
Oh yeah.
That is just that's just on a different. I don't know what it was. Maybe John Barry was trying to overcompensate for George Lazenby. Who knows? I don't know. I thought George Lazenby did a great job, but it's just me. But John Barry really went above and beyond when he did that score, and it was just sublime. But yeah, it's definitely the '60s, and of course, you've got David. I think David Arnold. A lot of people tend to say that he really smashed it with Quantum of Solace, and that's a really great score. But I also think that he did a really remarkable job for Casino Royale as
Yes.
well.
Yeah.
The Vesper theme, the Venice,
Yeah.
African Rundown
Yep.
in Madagascar. Those were great themes. But yeah, we could be here all day. There's just too much to choose from.
It's funny you bring up David Arnold and Casino Royale because I think that's one of the very few times that we kind of get a little throwback to the integration of the themes within the Bond films. I mean, you know your name, or you know my name. The that melody was played throughout, even the Miami International score when they was going to save the jet and the African rundown as well. You hear bits and pieces of Chris Cornell's theme, and
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, that pauses for a memorable scene, and that reminds you, bits of the pre-title sequence, which I think by far that was one of my favorite Craig's. But um, no, I think he did an amazing job, and he really emulated John Barry's ideals, but putting a modern spin on it, which I think is exactly what the Bond movies moving forward should have. Um, with the newer films, it's interesting because it's kind of goes off the rails a little bit depending on the mood that they're trying to set, and it just kind of feels a little bit more out there rather than a Bond film. But I have to agree with you. The '60s, I mean, that's where it all started. That's where we got that spy espionage sound.
Yeah.
There's nothing like just hearing the strings accompanied with the horns and kind of that big band jazz swing type of
Brass.
music. That is Bond. And
Yeah.
in another era that I kind of gravitate towards too, because I think also again David Arnold does an amazing job with using the horn sections, are the '90s and Pierce Brosnan's films. Um, my favorite score, I will say, out of that is Tomorrow Never Dies. I mean, there's so many great tunes in that. And you get a little bit more of the modernness of it too. You get a little bit of the kind of techno sound, but at the same time, you still get those really deep and strong brass notes. I mean, Backseat Driver. Oh, I say this every time I bring this up. I cannot have that playing in the car because I get myself into too much trouble. Because it's just you just see yourself and you see yourself in the scenes. That's such an iconic scene when he's controlling the car with his phone. I mean, you can see the scene playing in your head, and that's what the music does. And I think that's what a great song, Bond score and song does for me is if I can see the scene playing in my head and relive it as a Bond fan, it does it. But yeah, I say this.
You know what?
Oh yeah,
I was going to say, was it last year? We went to the Sound of 007 music where we had David Arnold,
right.
Hans Zimmer, just playing a medley of different Bond themes, and the boat scene in The World Is Not Enough,
Yes,
on the Thames. When they played that, Mark from Views from Mark, he was we attended together, and we both almost jumped out of our seats because it's so weird because it's okay when you're watching a Bond film, you're hearing the music and you're seeing the scenes. It's all great. It's fantastic. It's fist pumping stuff. Great, brilliant. But when you're in an auditorium and you're singing in an orchestra playing this music, and like as you're hearing the music, you're hearing the beats, you're replaying the scenes in your head,
Yeah.
and it just takes you to a different place.
It's a whole
It's
nother
just so
level.
unique.
I could
Yeah,
I could say the same thing when I went to go see Cue the Music, and the Cue the Music show, when it comes to Bond music, there's nobody that does it better than Cue the Music, and I'm excited to say that they're going to be doing a show in October, which I'm sure if you
yeah.
look at their Instagram you can find details on as well. But just look them up, everybody. They are fantastic. Warren Ringham, he loves Bond as much as he loves music, and it's just an amazing story on how that all came to be. But when I was there in London last October, and they played, I think it was Backseat Driver live, like everyone in that auditorium it was in Her Majesty's theater. Everyone was going insane. It was so crazy
Yeah.
to hear it live, and I've never felt such a good connection or such just hearing the sound. It was impressive. It was really impressive. So that kind of goes along with going to see like the movies like was it in concert, like different movies in concert. If you have a chance to do that, do it. Like I saw Skyfall in concert. I know they have Casino Royale in concert. To hear all of that live, it takes you to a whole nother level and gives you a whole nother appreciation to hear the music actually done live.
I think it's when you see it live as well. It give like you said, it gives you another level of appreciation for the filmmaking process
Mhm.
because you're seeing so many people coming together,
Yeah,
playing their respective instruments to bring this sound to like this all too familiar sound to life. And it's
right.
so easy to take it for granted because when when we watch TV, we watch films, shows, adverts, we hear accompanying music, and it's so easy to take that for granted because it's something we expect. But when you're actually seeing the people, really putting in the work,
Yeah. So we obviously spoke about how much we appreciate Bond music and music in general and what it does for us. Now we're gonna put on our critics' creative hats here and kind of discuss, were there any for you any Bond themes that are, I guess you say, canon or official now, that you would have liked that been different from or done by a different artist? Is there any movie in particular that you would have
for
changed
sure.
if you had the option to?
So I think I probably would have done for Tomorrow Never Dies. I probably would. I mean, I do like Cheryl Crow.
Hmm.
But I thought KD Lang's
Yes.
Surrender
Yeah.
was a superior song, and I think that should have been used as the main theme.
Hmm.
Um, Writings on the Wall, I think it's a good song. I just think somebody else other than Sam Smith should have sung it. Um, Another Way to Die from Quantum of Solace.
Ooh.
I think it's a lot of people don't like it. I don't think it's terrible, but I think it didn't need a duet.
Yeah.
They could have just simplified it and made it more
Hmm.
focused, or they could have done something else entirely different.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think that's about it. So a lot of people, for whatever reason, they don't like The Man with the Golden Gun by Lulu. I don't have a problem with it. I think
Yeah.
it's fun, it's bouncy,
Yes.
it's
Yes.
but yeah,
Now,
I think yeah, that's it for me.
it's interesting because speaking of Quantum, I would have really loved the No Good About Goodbye. That's what it is.
Yeah, that's the
It's
one.
such I again, it's the strings, it's the orchestral. It's a little bit of a slower ballad, definitely different compared to what they ultimately went with. And I don't know if it was because it was Casino Royale and Quantum were so close together that they wanted to keep the theme of just like, going all out, hard rock and roll.
Something punchy.
I think it would have been a little bit of a better balance if they went with, and plus you go throw back to the with the new Bond with a girl that's well acquainted with the Bond franchise and has done many songs for the Bond franchise, which would have been a kind of cool throwback. I would say. Now I would have loved, um, and that this is just me being a fan also, but again, I think it would have been really neat to see. Elvis Presley do a Bond song. I think that would have been really cool. And there's actually stories of Elvis Presley being a huge Bond fan. He actually, before he died, the last movie he saw in 1977 was The Spy Who Loved Me. But at the time, I think when he really was trying to push that, there wasn't a Bond movie coming out that year. But he put out a song called The Edge of Reality, which was his audition song that he wanted the Broccoli's to hear. There was some type of thing where basically they came down and said, "There's not going to be a Bond movie this year. We'll let you know, in the future." But then again, I think at the time it was late '60s. I think it was no, it was Paul McCartney that ended up, you know, with Live and Let Die, and
Hmm.
so they kind of not forgot about Elvis, but Elvis got busy with being in Las Vegas and all that, late '60s, early '70s, all that stuff. So he got busy. But I think that would have been such a iconic song to have
Yeah.
that name tied to a Bond. Because when you're an artist and your name gets tied to a Bond song, I mean, you're forever in history. Like you're forever
Yeah.
in that franchise history. So it's impressive for any artist to do that. But I think that'd be kind of cool. I thought it would have been really cool, and a lot of people talk about this all the time. Well, Tom Jones' Thunderball was as iconic, and I love it. It would have been interesting to hear Johnny Cash's Thunderball. I know that was in the running too. That would have been interesting to hear as well. Um, but the what else did they have for also with Thunderball? Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, which also
Hmm.
it's kind of cool that they recognize those songs by still incorporating them in the film. Like you hear remnant of
Yeah.
Kiss Kiss Bang Bang when they're at the Kiss Kiss Club, or Katie Lang's at the very end for the credit scene. They play that, so at least that's in the film still. Um,
Yeah.
I think it would have been for both of those situations a bit more impactful to see it at the beginning, because, like you said, I think Katie Lang's song had a bit more of that punch, while Sheryl Crow was great, but it was just very kind of drawn out and
Hmm.
all for a pre-title sequence. It was okay, and it worked with the visuals. It worked with the visuals, um, but I'm sure depending on what the song would have been, they could have changed the visuals as well. But no, those were just a few things, and it's interesting. I really like those that you picked because we're kind of on the same wavelength there.
But one of the things I would say is going back to Thunderball was I know yeah, Dionne Warwick did Mr. Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. And I believe Shirley Bassey actually did a rendition of of the same song as well.
Yeah. Hmm.
And in all honesty, I actually thought Dionne Warwick's version was better than Bassey's. Um, and so I would have liked to have heard Dionne Warwick do another, a different Bond theme for,
Right. Yeah.
one of the films, and that would have been interesting. So,
Definitely.
but yeah, in terms of who I would have liked to have seen do one. So I think Chris Cornell has kind of spoiled me a little bit because um, when I heard that he was doing You Know My Name, I think, oh, they're gonna do a rock song, and that's is that really Bond? Yeah, and it's like after Madonna's Die Another Day, um, I think, okay, all bets are off in terms of what kind of sound they could go for.
Mhm.
So when I eventually did hear You Know My Name, I thought it was brilliant. I
Yeah.
thought it was just absolutely perfect. And to this day, it's definitely my favorite of the Craig era main Bond themes. And I would like to see another sort of rock band do a similar theme.
Right.
There's a group called, I'm not even sure if they're still making music. I think they're Canadian, a Canadian rock group called Our Lady Peace.
Mm.
Um, and yeah, I would really love for them to um, do a Bond theme. I think they do a really good job.
Very cool. Yeah, and this is perfect because we're heading into the last question here, kind of finishing up our conversation of who would you, if you had the opportunity to sign a contract with, would you like to see take the reins in the new era of Bond? I mean, we obviously know it's going to be a huge change. We don't know what the direction is right now, but if you had the keys and if you were able to be in charge, what are a couple names that you would love to see kind of help with that transition?
So I have a few for scoring. So one, because I really see. I know he's quite old now, but I think it'd just be a massive missed opportunity whilst he's still alive for him to at least just do one Bonding. That's John Williams.
Yes.
I really would love for to hear what he would do.
Mhm.
In terms of more realistic options, I'd love for Ramin Djawadi, who did
Oh.
Game of Thrones and the first Iron Man movie, to
Mhm.
score a Bond film. He would be brilliant, just going off of his work on Game of Thrones. Um, Michael Desplat, Michael Giacchino, they'd
Oh
also be great
yes.
options.
Yes.
In terms of you know, singing the main theme, that's a tough one. I mean, I mentioned I would like to have seen Our Lady Peace
Mhm.
sing a Bond theme. I wouldn't mind the Nigerian British artist Thames.
Okay.
She's pretty good. She wrote the song for the latest Black Panther film that
Okay.
Rihanna sang.
Okay.
Um, yeah, Thames is a really good songwriter and singer. I think she'd do a really good Bond theme. So
Sweet.
yeah, I'd like to see her do it.
Very cool. Yeah, I again, me being a kind of a crooner myself, I have a few people. I would really love to see Michael Bublé grab onto a ball
Okay, yeah,
and do something there. I think that is long overdue. Matt Forbes. I posted about him before. I even created a video with a pre-title sequence to one of his songs. I think it's Gloomy Sunday. He's out of Canada. He's super cool and he's very what I love is he's very engaging with his fans on Instagram and everything. I mean, he just is a fan of the music itself and I think he would
yeah,
kill a Bond theme if he had the opportunity to. And then kind of rounding things out, I know she could do either rock, she could do jazz, she could do quite a bit. That's Lady Gaga. I think she would do a great job
yeah,
taking the role and doing something fun, putting a little bit of her own spin, but still keeping the Bond sound. When
yeah,
it comes to the score, I couldn't agree more with your list. That was fantastic. Get the gentleman who did the Kingsman score, but that guy, I think he would do a great job as well. But the list could go on. I think John Williams has. I mean, I would love to hear what at least do something. Maybe do one of those like how they have like the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra, and a
yeah,
lot of other orchestras put out their covers of Bond themes. I would love if he could just maybe do a few of the Bond themes or different
yeah,
do something but add his own twist. I think that'd be kind of cool to hear at least to give us a little taste of what it would have been like because
yeah.
he's getting up there in age, but he has expressed that he's always wanted to do it if given the opportunity to.
I think him not doing it is going to be one of the most heartbreaking
Mhm.
missed opportunities because guy is just insane. It's mind-boggling at how
Yeah,
talented he is.
right.
Whether we're talking E.T., Jaws, Home Alone,
Yes.
Harry
Iconic
Potter,
films. Yes.
yeah, Indiana Jones, Star Wars, of course.
Yeah.
The guy is just, um, he's a phenom.
Yes.
And if I could just, I'm getting a bit
Make
angry
a
at myself
petition.
for
Let's
bringing
sign a
this up.
petition. Get the whole 007 GB club to start a petition, and we'll
To
all
get
go.
John Williams to score the film.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, we kind of need an actor. We need a movie first, which that's Oh, that's a whole nother discussion. Everybody watching now, or listening now, if you guys have any insights or any suggestions or any opinions, please list them in the comments below. I'd love to hear who you would think would take the reins for the next film, and or what you would have liked to see or hear. I think it's been a great discussion, Fletcher. I think it's been a
Yeah, it
lot of
certainly has.
talking Bond music, and thank you so much for joining me on the channel. I know it's been a while
Thanks
since
for having me
I
again.
posted one, but what a great episode to come back to and get back into posting and talking about Bond. Fletcher, you can follow him on Instagram. I'll put his Instagram in the description below. Share some love, give him some love, and yeah, thanks for tuning in and listening to this fun episode of just talking about James Bond and music. So that being said, I'm Christopher Morales, that one Bond guy. You guys take care and be safe. See ya.